chess books, including the excellent Forcing Chess Moves, which was published in 2008. Charles, I really enjoyed Forcing Moves. Very good, very good book. And of course, the book that we're going to be talking about today, The Real Paul Morphy, His Life and Chess Games, which was originally published in 2024 last year, and has recently won the English Chess Federation Book of the Year in 2025. The judges wrote, are you ready for this, Charles? This is good.
Yes.
Morphy's enduring influence is perhaps best shown by a major chess publisher issuing a new high-quality biography 166 years after the last serious game he played. Sorry, I'm just going to mute that. I'm going to start again. Hang on. There we go. Sorry, I don't know. I was getting some noises off that. I'm going to start that again. The judges wrote, Morphy's enduring influence is perhaps best shown by a major chess publisher issuing a new high-quality biography 166 years after the last serious game he played. The author, Charles Hertan, writes well and clearly. As a professional psychotherapist, he's well qualified to consider the mental issues associated with Morphy's decline. The book is beautifully produced with many excellent photographs, a worthy tribute to a player often described as the pride and sorrow of chess. So Charles, welcome to the broadcast and congratulations on the English Chess Federation Award. I mean, how do you feel, as they say?
Oh, quite an honor. Yeah, that was fantastic. I consider it probably the most prestigious chess award out there. So yeah. I was overjoyed.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I have to say, I've really enjoyed reading the book over the past couple of months. Actually, I've had it on my phone, and very, very handy for reading on the train. Really good. I should say, welcome everyone. I can see we've got people on the chat already. So welcome everyone, and we're going to be throwing out questions to you and looking at some of Morphy's games. So anyway, Charles, my first question for you is, how did you first get interested in Morphy? I mean, I know, of course, he's kind of, for any American chess player, of course, he's a hero.
Yes.
But what prompted you to do so much incredible research and write the book?
Well, I actually initially set out to produce a book about the top 5 to 10 American players of all time, because I thought nothing like that had been done in a long time. But when I started doing my research, and the first thing I do was look over the whole body of games, and I just was so drawn to Morphy's games, looking at them more seriously and looking at his whole body of work. And then, at the same time, I was, when I start my initial research, it encompasses the games and it encompasses biography. And as I started to read about his story, it dawned on me pretty quickly that I wanted to do it. And I also realized that there was a niche waiting to be filled. That, when I looked at the Morphy books out there, there wasn't really a comprehensive one that put his life story, put his games in the context of his life story.
Yeah.
The quintessential biography is Lawson, but there's no chess games. And that would be something like doing a book about Picasso with no paintings.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I just thought, kind of to my surprise, I saw there's a real opportunity here.
Yeah.
Deep research into the life and games and put it all together in one volume.
I agree. But also, I mean, from my viewpoint, of course, I know roughly Morphy's story. Any serious chess player must know something about Morphy. But for me, he's always been a really mysterious figure, actually, because even now, I mean, you've done a brilliant job of writing about his life, but it's quite extraordinary how he had this brief really brief flash of glory,
Right.
and then, well, at least in the chess world, virtually disappeared. So it's, for me, he's a very mysterious character, actually.
Yes. And then also the fact that his legend was so enduring, and it's hard for us even to imagine today sort of the spell that he cast on the chess world. But, I have been thinking about it, and he was basically the Magnus of his time. Everyone who was met him or saw him play or was aware of his games were just in awe of his talent and his insights, and the basically totally new way that he synthesized chess understanding.
Charles, we got our first.
That's
Charles, we
sort
got.
of
Sorry to break in.
That's okay.
We
Go
got
ahead.
we got our first question
Yeah.
from Kevin Winter. Hi, Kevin. Nice to see you here. Kevin says he thinks that Alekin said that Morphy was one of the greatest positional players,
Right.
when actually we amateurs know him for tactical brilliances. How do you
Right.
explain, Charles? How do you explain this? This is Kevin's question.
Yeah. Well, he was he was an incredible positional player, and Capablanca also cited him as the greatest chess stylist of all time. And I think what he particularly meant by that is that positional play at its core has to do with objectivity and figuring out what a position demands and playing in accordance with that. And Morphy was the best ever by far in his time at doing just that. He was the first truly versatile player of the era. You had Anderson, who was a great player and an incredible tactician, but he was at heart a romantic. The romantic ethos had a strong hold on players. So they not only wanted to win, but they wanted to create beautiful combinations. Morphy went beyond that in a way that nobody had and strove first of all for objectivity and a more scientific approach to chess. And I think that is what players like Capablanca and Aliakin meant when he just he played with a correctness that the world had never seen before. And it's true that his brilliant combinations usually flowed out of superior understanding. He
Yeah.
wasn't just going into murky positions and having random things come up. He was usually playing combinations out of a position of strength.
Yeah, and what I want to emphasize that tonight we're going to be looking at some chess. In fact, we should plunge in and look at a game, but we're going to be looking at not just some brilliances, but also some long games, some end games, some middle games. And I mean, there's one particular game that I'm really keen to look at, which has been a favourite of mine for years. And if I asked anyone to guess who the players were, I think no way would you guess that it's Morphy. But anyway, let's plunge in and look at this first game. So this is a really long game. So this is a Paul Morphy playing Johann Löwenthal, and this was an offhand game played in 1850. Yeah, 1850.
That's right. Yeah. When Morphy was 12 years old still.
12 years old. So Morphy born in 1837, have I got that right? Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah.
So Löwenthal, at that time, well, I mean, he had a reputation as being one of the strongest masters in Europe. So was he simply on tour in the States? I mean, I don't know too much about Löwenthal's history, to be honest.
He came to the States on business. Well, actually, what happened was he got expelled from Hungary for political reasons after their revolution fell through. And so I think he initially came to the States for business opportunities, but then he realized later that he wanted to be a chess professional. So even like professionals today, he knew he needed to go back to Europe, and he ended up in London. But yeah, this is in that period when he initially emigrated from Hungary, and he toured around the country playing the best players he could find. But Morphy was basically an unknown. He was a kid, and he was known locally in New Orleans as a very strong talent. But Lowenthal had no idea what he was getting into,
Yeah,
and
I mean, so
everybody was stunned that a
so
12-year-old with no tournament experience, could even play against, Lowenthal. Lowenthal wasn't quite in his prime yet, but he was arguably already a top 10 to 20 player in the world. And he couldn't win a game against Morphy. And there's different accounts of the final score, but the most accepted account is that Morphy beat him 2.5 to 1/2.
so that's pretty remarkable. These days, we have chess prodigies 12 years old. Yeah, they beat up grandmasters. That's normal. But in those days, that was really remarkable. So here, this is where things kick off. Now, I'm not going to sort of delve too much into these moves and I know this is it's quite a long game. So, in fact, what we're interested in is this end game. And I think, for a 12-year-old in those days to handle this end game as well as Morphy did is pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah, I commented that you would still expect, a leading grandmaster to beat a 12-year-old unknown from this endgame position. It's very complicated. And even Morphy's next move, Rook A1, he understood the underpinnings of the position, and he's playing to win, which it is a very remarkable game.
Yeah, I mean, this reminds me. I mean, this kind of idea, playing rook, sweeping the rook across and playing A4, reminds me of a Fischer game, actually, Fischer Gardia. A different kind of position, but still, I think his understanding that he wanted to make this pawn break and that A4 was actually very desirable, I think it's fascinating. Let's just see how it went and why he wanted to make this pawn break. So basically, he's managed to get his queenside majority going.
Yeah, and the rook needs entry points.
Yeah. So, if anyone was thinking we're just going to be looking at crash, bang, wallop kind of brilliances, right. I'm afraid no. But let's just zip through this really quickly. I mean, we can see that, Morphy is just outplaying him beautifully, actually.
Right. And by the way, the end of this game is very controversial.
Oh, really?
There's some new analysis of it, too.
In what way controversial?
Lowenthal gave a different version of how the game ended, which is... It's different than the version that Ernest Morphy, Morphy's uncle, published. So the game was published, in a journal in Europe, and then Lowenthal came out with his own version of how the game ended, and which was different. But
he didn't change the result.
He did actually. Lowenthal claimed that the game was drawn.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But that's kind of beyond the scope of this discussion. But I do talk about it in the book, and there's some new stuff I've unearthed about it, which when the next edition comes out, there's even more intrigue about this ending.
Oh, okay. But
in the version that Morphy's uncle gave, he won it very smooth. And his technique was pretty flawless.
I mean, that's a superb end game. It really is.
Yeah.
So that's really interesting. We have a question. Why did Morphy from Hans Esser? Why did Morphy disappear from professional chess after 2 years, and what happened to him thereafter? Well, okay, Hans, I think what we're going to do is we'll answer that question a little bit later on. It's, of course, it's the question that I think we all want to hear more about, because I think
that's a big can of worms. Yeah,
that's a big can of worms, exactly. But just very quickly,
right.
so this game was played when Morphy was 12 years old. So what did you? I mean, I know that you've done a lot of research into Morphy's family and his early life. So who principally taught Morphy chess?
Okay, it was Ernest Morphy, his uncle. So that's Ernest Morphy is sort of the hidden ace in the hole in the Morphy story, because on the face of it, it looks like Morphy came out of nowhere. He had no tournament experience when he went and won the first American Congress, but what he did have is his uncle Ernest was one of the strongest players in the South at the time, and he was a very good analyst and an opening specialist. Oh. So he studied extensively with his uncle Ernest, even beginning at age 10. So while he didn't have tournament experience, he did have a lot of good analytical experience, and he played over 100 games with his uncle Ernest.
Okay, now that's a good training session.
Yes,
okay, that's really important.
Right. So his brilliance didn't quite come out of nowhere. He also played many games against some other masters living in New Orleans at the time, including Eugene Rousseau, who was an experienced European player who had played at the Café de la Régence and played a match with Kieseritsky and held his own. So, he was sparring against good club players. Then he had a very qualified coach who was, his uncle was also very invested in Morphy's career.
Okay, we should also say that, in some families, you wouldn't have time to indulge in some kind of pastime like chess. But Morphy came from a pretty affluent background.
That's true. Yeah, very affluent background. Yeah, his father was a Supreme Court justice for the state of Louisiana, and one of the most respected citizens in New Orleans, and well off. And his mother was a prominent socialite who was a very talented musician, and she was also from a family of means, but a different type of family of means. Her father was a very successful auctioneer, and as I described in the book, that might have got him involved in some unsavory dealings. So it's a colorful story of how he made his fortune. But yeah, both of his parents came from well-off families.
Okay,
he was very pampered.
It sounds like a very very southern story in the States.
Very southern story.
Yeah.
It was.
So so he grew up in New Orleans. Or how do you pronounce it? New Orleans?
Yeah, New Orleans is the standard American language.
New Orleans.
Yeah. there are people who say New Orleans.
Yeah.
So it probably depends on where you come from.
Okay. Listen, let's look at another game of chess.
Sure.
So this one was... we should probably plunge straight into the USA Congress Grand Tournament in New York in 1857. So this is 7 years on. So Morphy, 19 years old by this time.
Right.
And I mean, could we say that this was Morphy's kind of breakthrough tournament, or had he?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Because he was still an unknown, although he was so talented, and his legend was already, out there enough that people favored him to win the tournament, even though he had never played in a real tournament in his life. But he wasn't proven. And then his opponent in this game, Lewis Paulson, showed up, who also was a tremendously strong but little known player at that stage, and a young man himself. He was 23, I believe. So yeah, this was certainly his breakthrough event.
Okay, and this was, I mean, Morphy won the tournament by a mile, didn't he?
he did, but the early stages of the Paulson match were challenging. And this game is not only one of Morphy's most famous brilliancies, if not the most famous, but it also is the straw that broke the camel's back in the match. It broke things wide open.
Okay.
But interestingly, in terms of what we were saying earlier, there was a game before this where he ground down Paulson in a very difficult ending.
Right.
And that was typical of Morphy. And one of the unique things about him was that in a tough match situation, he could grind people down. He could grind the top masters in the world down in an ending, and then the next game uncork, an incredible brilliancy. So
yeah,
that's why I always come back to his versatility.
Yeah,
That he was great in every phase.
definitely. I have to say, I mean, of course, as you say, this is one of his most well-known games. But
Yes.
this has always frustrated me because I look at White's play here, and when I look at this next move, c3, I just think, okay, what on earth was he doing? For me, and that's why I've always thought, yeah, well, was Morphy, all that everyone says he is? Because this is just a bad move, and after Queen d3, well, White is under pressure. I mean, of course.
And yet White made a comeback and could have been okay in this game. And you are correct, but it's also a signature of the times that there were a lot of moves that are positionally automatic today that that were overlooked then.
Yeah.
A lot of things we take for granted were not well known then.
Anyway, in this position, yeah, d3. Come on, guys.
or even d4. It turns out is an equalizing.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But after this, yeah. Oh, I can see that I've opened a can of worms with pronunciation, as ever on the channel. Whenever I get into pronunciation, there's always someone who thinks they know better. So anyway, so yeah, let's just crash through this one because it's pretty well known.
Sure.
And yeah, you just have to think, what on earth is White up to?
Right.
And Queen takes f3.
Right. Yeah, and the spectators had no idea what was going on at this point. The U.S. champion Charles Stanley said that Morphy should be committed to an insane asylum for playing Queen f3.
Oh, that's fun, because I mean, again, to my eyes, it doesn't look outrageous. It looks pretty
natural.
Pretty natural, yeah. It's
well, as I would say in forcing chess moves, you always analyze the most forcing move first, and that's Morphy was the champion at that.
Exactly. Now, listen. So Rook d1 was played here, and we'll see the denouement in a second. But I'm going to test our viewers because
right, good.
They're sitting there, and yeah, come on, they need to work a bit, So if White had played Queen d3 instead, okay, viewers, what should Black play after Queen d3? And Michael 4821, when was the book published? It was published in 2024, so it's fairly fresh. How many years did you spend writing it, Charles?
4 years. I started during COVID, so I had a lot of time on my hands.
That's when everyone started writing their books.
Yeah, but it took that long to do, the necessary amount of research.
Sure.
I'm a great believer that deep research is the key to any good book.
Absolutely, and I have to say, having I've been dipping into the book over the last couple of months, and I can see how much hard work you've put into it, and it's I found it absolutely fascinating. Really enjoyed it. No replies yet. Black to play. What are you going to do, guys? Have we refuted Morphy's brilliancy? Black to play. I'm shocked. They didn't expect to work so hard. This is the thing.
Uh-huh.
We've got someone suggesting rook e3. Rook e3? What's that? That allows mate in 2.
Well, he is looking at a forcing move, but
He is a forcing move. Yeah, fair enough.
But not all forcing moves are good.
Yeah, indeed. Well, someone suggested bishop g2, but also not.
Right. Yeah, there's a hole with that, isn't there?
Yeah, we can take this. That's why queen d3 was played, and suddenly, well,
right.
white is very much back in the game there.
Yeah.
We got bishop f2 suggested. Now that's an interesting one, because if that's taken, then something pretty spectacular happens.
Right.
Okay, that's a tricky one. I wonder whether maybe we have to do this. I mean, this is... I'm not using a computer here, guys, but yeah, I mean, I would say that
Well,
white is in the game there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, that's not bad. I'll stick with that. Ah, interesting. No one's there. We got bishop takes rook suggested.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It's a tough one.
I'll take it back. There we go. We've managed to outfox them already. This is great.
Yeah, well, if I can give a hint, it comes under the category of a quiet forcing move, as I would put it in.
Yeah. Yes, I should say that I mentioned it at the top of the broadcast that Charles wrote a book published in 2008 called Forcing Chess Moves. I think it is.
Forcing Chess Moves.
Yeah, it's on my bookshelf somewhere in that pile of books. It's there, and I have to say I really enjoyed that book. It was excellent. Are you doing a new edition of it, or have you got back?
Well, it is in. It's gone through a few editions. Nothing on the horizon right now for that.
You're concentrating on Morphy, which I quite understand. You found your niche.
Yeah, I do have other projects in the works.
Okay, we've got Guido Costantino and Robert Cecchino, who've both suggested f5. Well done.
Yes, there we go. Yes.
Well done. So simply preventing queen takes rook, and I guess the king is just going to hide in the corner, and then we're back to roughly what happened in the game. So well done to...
Actually, I believe the king doesn't hide. I believe the king has to go to f8.
Oh, really? Okay. I'll trust you on that one. So well done to Robert and well done to Guido for getting f5. Good stuff. Good. We've kept them on their toes. So in the game, rook d1 was played. And the game finished like... Well, I'm going to test everyone again. This one's a little bit easier. Okay, so black to play. There are several ways to win. So black to play. Oh, it's all gone quiet again. This really is the easy one. It's good to know everyone's thinking. It's certainly kept the chat quiet. That means they're cogitating. Whoa! Rookie 1 suggested. Oh no, rookie.
Again, very forcing.
Yeah. I think that can be taken either way. Actually,
that could be with the rook, especially. Yeah, that's true.
So we won't do that.
Yeah.
Robert Cecchino, who's on fire today, suggests rook g2.
Yeah, that move will do it.
That's a good one. Not played in the game, but rook g2. Well done, Robert.
Right, and incidentally, if you're queen b6, rook h2, and mate.
Ah, sweet. There we go. Yeah, and if queen d3, then there's lots of checks.
Yes. Yeah.
And that'll do nicely. So yeah, well done, Robert. Really nice. And bishop g2 check was the game continuation.
Yeah,
Uh,
Morphy tended to play very practically in situations like this. He would find, sometimes the most practical line,
yeah, and got there in the end.
and
Uh,
that thread was made in two, yeah, with the rooks.
um, right, I'm going to move on.
Okay.
Um, so basically, as we mentioned, this was the kind of breakout tournament
Yes.
for Morphy.
Hmm.
So this was 1857. So he was 19 years old. Okay,
Right.
so basically, what happened next?
Okay. Well, so what happened next was, um, well, everyone in America, we were overjoyed and wowed by this guy, and they all wanted Morphy to play a match against Staunton. So his local club, the New Orleans club, sent a letter to Staunton inviting him to come over here and play Morphy for $5,000. And of course, the reply was Staunton kind of politely laughed in their face and said, I'm not coming over here. And Staunton is a very interesting character, and I have a lot to say about him in my book. Most of it positive, because I
Oh,
think I think his contribution to chess theory has been way undervalued. But anyway, he wasn't. He was actually semi-retired by then, so he wasn't going to sail the seas.
well, I was
And so,
that was the point
yeah,
I was going to make. Actually, I mean, Staunton was
right,
his at his best in the early 1840s,
right,
and
right.
he in the 1851 tournament at the Great Exhibition in London. I mean, he didn't win that. He didn't shine, and
Yes,
it by then I think it was clear that he passed his best,
yeah.
and
Anderson clobbered him in London,
yeah,
1851. So,
exactly.
but what the thing is that Americans still idolize Staunton. He
Okay,
was he was the leading chess author in the world, and had authored, the standard works and the tournament book of 1850 London 1851.
yeah,
So
didn't but it
still
didn't mean he was the best in the world though. Then
that's
that's the
correct.
thing.
That's correct. But the Americans hadn't really got the memo, except for except for Morphy. Morphy knew because Morphy was in touch with everything that was happening in the chess world.
Okay,
Um, so, but his countrymen wanted him to beat Staunton, and Morphy was sort of fixated on Staunton too. And the reason for that was because he didn't like Staunton's style. He thought it wasn't objective enough, and also Morphy was still a bit of a romantic at heart, and he liked open games. He believed in open games, so he wanted to sort of teach Staunton a lesson to show the world that his way was
okay,
superior.
that's really interesting. I mean, did you find that kind of information in newspaper articles or letters or what?
Yeah,
Where did you
it's
glean that opinion? I mean, that's very interesting.
yeah. From reading all the sources, I mean, certainly there's a book written by Frederick Edge, who became Morphy's valet in his trip during his trip to Europe. He met him at the American Congress, and Edge was an Englishman and a journalist, and he wrote a book about Morphy's travels in Europe. So a lot of it's in there, but yeah, I would say that opinion per se came out of the sort of the sum of my research. I mean, if you read about what Morphy said about Staunton, he actually said that Staunton was a very, very strong player, but he basically said that he basically disparaged his positional approach. And part of that was because, um, you know, one of the most important things Staunton did, if not the most important thing, was to put the Sicilian defense on the map as a respectable opening.
Hmm.
Because up till then, the only great player who had championed it was Philidor, but Philidor was more like a legend than a real flesh and blood player because so few of his games have come down, and there wasn't none of his games were against equals or very strong,
Yeah, very true.
competition in a match. So we really hadn't seen a body of work that showed that the Sicilian defense was a viable weapon. And
Charles, I'm sorry to cut in. I'm
okay,
very conscious that time is flying, so I
good.
want to continue with the story. So the next
Yeah.
phase, how did Morphy get to Europe? When did that happen, and what happened?
Okay.
Let's start with how did he get there? Don't just say steamer.
Right. Well. So as we said, Staunton said, if you want to play the top players, you need to come over here.
Hmm.
And some people thought that implied that Staunton was going to play him, but Staunton didn't really say that. So Morphy was at first reluctant to go. His father had died 6 months before the American tournament, and but everyone else in America really wanted him to go test his mettle, including his uncle Ernest, and his friends sort of won him over. And he had time because he had got his law degree, but it would be a year before he could legally practice in New Orleans. So thankfully, he decided he was going to go. He wanted to go to Europe and test himself, and specifically he wanted to play Staunton. That was his goal, and he didn't end up doing that. But in the process, he ended up playing the other top players in Europe and getting matches against them.
Okay, so I want to show this game. So this was a 25 move victory uh, by Paul Morphy again against Johann Löwenthal, and this was from London 1858. Now it says this is a casual game. Are any games casual? I don't know. So he basically showed up in London and went to the chess clubs and started sort of issuing challenges. Or
Yes, right. Yeah, and people were very excited to have him there. His reputation did precede him,
okay,
but he still was untested among, European masters, among the vanguard.
this game reminds me of certain games we've been seeing in the World Cup
Mhm.
taking place at the moment. Actually,
Yeah, do you know a lot of 19th century openings are making a comeback now, because to avoid book and to because some of them like some of them like the Gioco Pianissimo are
well,
very good at avoiding computer traps and
absolutely, yeah,
allowing you to just play chess.
yeah.
And so, openings we never thought we'd see again
So
are
we've
making
got
a comeback.
this very familiar structure, which arises in many variations of the Petrov. We saw this in the game between Sindarov and Wei Yi
Uh-huh.
in their first game in the World Cup in the
Right.
final.
Uh-huh.
So let's just crack on with this. And now things are starting to happen. F5. And this is an interesting moment because, okay, again, we have a queen exchange. Right, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to ask our viewers, okay, white to play. What did Morphy do next? Yes, Kevin, you're absolutely right. Morphy did indeed train to be a lawyer. And we'll get on to what happened to Morphy when he returned to America in a second, but his law career was certainly part of the story. But first of all, let's concentrate on this position. So it's white to play.
Right. Right. And White went into this position only because of his next move, but he had the objectivity that he knew when to transpose into an ending when it was positionally correct. That's something that often Adolf Anderson would not do. He would go out of his way to keep queens on and often play inferior moves.
Right. Okay. Oh, it's all gone quiet on the chat again. Oh, white to play, guys.
Yeah.
They're all just so shy.
Yeah, what I would like to add is that if Black could play two free moves here, he would have a great position.
I think I know which ones you mean.
Yeah,
Probably this and that.
Castle Long in '96. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
yeah,
don't let that happen.
yeah. I think there's actually a slight delay in the broadcast, which is why we're getting the moves are coming in late. So now they've flooded in. So we have Robert Sakino, we have Scamato, Sinister Garden, Mikhail Livansky, Paul Green, all suggest E6. Well done, guys. Excellent. So
Great.
opens that up. That's rather nice. And of course, this is vulnerable. And knight takes E6 played. Yeah, this is nice. He didn't just take on... I mean, taking on D5 is probably good, but this is even better. You know, all white's pieces are working.
Yeah.
And that was the end of that. Very, very brisk. Yeah, nice stuff. Excellent.
Simple chess.
Yeah. Herr Schnatzker says there's no delay, we're just slow. I don't believe that. I think there is a slight delay. Okay, so that was a casual game, but they actually had a serious match, which so Löwenthal and Morphy, which ended in 9 wins for Morphy, 3 losses and 2 draws. So that's a pretty overwhelming finish.
Yes. Right. And this was his first serious match in Europe. Lowenthal was the first to challenge him.
So again, this is a very long game. It's 80 moves long in total, and Morphy playing black.
Yep.
So this we're going to highlight his endgame technique, which wasn't perfect actually. Even here, I wonder whether one should avoid h5. I wonder whether black should actually play h5 in this position. It's possible. Although there is king g5 and f4, f5, but
yeah,
maybe that's the issue.
I
don't know.
His technique was close to perfect here. There are a few minor errors that Stockfish reveals, but the interesting thing about this ending is that this is the game where Lowenthal said he felt Morphy's full strength. He felt himself, against an immovable force.
Right.
And it's interesting that it wasn't the brilliant combination that impressed him so much. It was this game.
Okay,
and,
so
somewhere in here there was an only move that could have held, but Morphy's technique was amazing.
He got there. Yeah. Okay, we won't dwell on that one.
Yeah. And Black's able to get back and stop the pawn.
Yeah.
Not advanced enough.
By
1 or 2 tempi, it's close.
Yeah, but
very close.
Yeah, nice technique. Yeah,
yes,
good stuff.
Yeah,
I would like to look at this game. Well, no, let's look at an Anderson game. We should look at an Anderson game actually. So this was match against Anderson. Adolf Anderson, yeah, as you say, one of the leading players at that time.
Yes.
But Morphy won the match, 7 wins, 2 losses and 2 draws. And this was played in Paris. Did Morphy enjoy being in Paris, actually? I just wonder.
Very much, actually. He loved Paris, and he went back there after his retirement even. His family had connections there. And the Parisians loved him. He was a hero, not since Benjamin Franklin had an American made such an impression on French society. He was the toast of Paris. And they adored him not only because of his chess, but his modest demeanor and his approachability.
Nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin, before we look at this game, because I find this very interesting. So Morphy was white, Anderson black, and of course we're playing an open Sicilian. And
Yep,
this,
that's right.
at the moment, this has a very modern character to it.
That's
Kevin
right.
asks, where did you get your research material from? Was there a particular source? Is there a Morphy collection or archive somewhere?
Well, there are many, many sources for Morphy because, within a year of his European tour, within a year or two, about 16 books had been written about him already. So there's a lot of contemporary ones, and I went through the most important of those that I could get my hands on. I read the Lowenthal wrote a games collection, and also Max Long. So I read those. Um, in the period in the later, after that, 40, 50 years later, there was a very important book written by uh, Maroxy. So that, at that time, that became the definitive Morphy work. And that tried to be complete, although, Morphy games have been unearthed since then.
Yeah.
And after that, I mean, in modern times, there wasn't that much new that came out, but there was a book by Megan Shebet, an American, which was very interesting because it talked more than any of the previous books about Morphy's role in the evolution of chess thought. So anyway, all the books I could get my hands on, a lot of contemporary articles because he got tremendous press coverage during his meteoric rise. There's Frederick Edge's book about his, Morphy's exploits in Europe, and that's a first-hand account because Edge was with him throughout most of that trip. And then a lot of online research. I wanted to not only do a Morphy book, but I wanted to set the stage by talking about 19th century chess before Morphy. What was it like when he came in, and how did he change things?
Right.
And I also wanted to explore the history of New Orleans, where he grew up, and how that influenced him. So, I read about that research even took me into the areas like researching the famous pirates, Jean and Pierre Lafitte, because it turned out that one of Morphy's grandfathers actually both of his grandfathers had dealings with with the Lafitte, the famous Lafitte pirates.
Oh, okay. As I said, a very southern story. Listen, let's look at this game because I think it's very, very interesting. So,
Yeah.
This is a very modern variation, of course.
Right. And what I want the listener to realize is that basically Paul Morphy invented the open Sicilian. It was an offbeat, line that had been tried very seldom up till then. And, it had been tried a few times, notably by Anderson against Staunton in a resounding win. But Morphy was the first to realize the potential of the open, and that it was the real way to challenge the Sicilian.
Yeah, very interesting.
He understood the position so well that he played white against the best Sicilian players of the day, and he tended to crush them.
Well, let's look at this. I mean, I find this variation very interesting because Morphy instinctively understood that it was perhaps quite nice to provoke these pawns forward and to use the d5 square, that this knight can be rerouted here.
That's right.
I mean, I'm a big fan of this structure with black. So this
right. He also went for an early assault on d6. So in this case, Anderson defended correctly against that, and we're sort of in new territory. This had only been played maybe once before.
Right. So,
but then Anderson went a little bit off the deep end here.
Yeah, I mean, of course.
Anderson liked the move f5 for black in the Sicilian. So, this is the little unsound edge to Anderson's style.
Well,
he didn't have as correct a positional sense.
Absolutely. I mean, whenever I'm talking about the Kalashnikov, the Sveshnikov, and the Naidorf, because those are really my three openings that I played in my career. Then I always, when I'm commenting on these games, I always say, if you move the f pawn, there should be a public health warning attached to it, because essentially I like to fight for control of d5, but when you play f5, this is a randomizer basically, and well, of course one could just exchange on f5, but actually Morphy plays correctly, and if a6, it's too late basically. This is actually very good for white. So it went f4, knight d5. So this is where he's calculated very well.
Right, and again, it's his striving for correctness. He was trying to play the best move, not just a good move.
Here, actually, I'm not going to sort of delve too much into the analysis here, because it is very complex. In fact, one should probably just take this immediately. But anyway, Morphy went for this.
He did. He pushed the envelope a little bit.
He did, but actually, you can understand why. It's pretty tempting.
Absolutely. It's beautiful chess.
Yeah. I mean, d5 is a move that's, I think, very easy to overlook.
Yeah, d5 is a beautiful move. Yeah, the game is very deep. You can analyze this one for quite a while.
Yeah. I mean, in fact, king e7 is a better move, but anyway, we won't go into that. And yeah, by this stage, it all works out beautifully for white. And here, black resigned because that one's coming in. So yeah, Anderson got duffed up pretty badly there. So yeah, that's the flash Morphy. But what I want to do is I mentioned this game at the start. So this is a game between Morphy and Leventhal. We're running out of time, so I'm going to zip through this. Morphy playing white, and okay. Again, we've got this typical structure of 4 against 3 on the king side, but I really like the way that Morphy approached this one. So you could play f4 here, but after this, basically in a major piece endgame, this is okay for black. But Morphy played far more enterprisingly with knight g3. And again, we've got this move e6 actually, which I find interesting, very typical. So you'll notice this. So yeah, pawn takes pawn. That's a nice move. So Leventhal brought this back. Now, I'm going to ask our viewers how they would play in this position. This is a very interesting moment. So over to you, everyone. So white to play. What would you do next, and why? I've used this game on a few occasions in training sessions, because I think it's such an instructive position actually, and a really instructive game.
Yes. Yeah, my next project, I'm going to write a book about positional chess, so non-forcing chess moves. And this is a good example because you have to find the move that most meets the demands of the position.
Yeah.
Figure out what that is. It's not always about forcing moves. Sometimes it's about understanding.
Absolutely, yeah.
Your advantages and your opponent's weaknesses.
So it's white to play. Remember, folks, there's a queen en prise. I should just mention that. John says at least he was fast. He was suggesting g4, and it was a quick suggestion. Very quick. Okay, so this is interesting. So Shoulders of Giants suggests queen b3 check and take on b7. So yeah, I mean, if one can get away with taking this, then all is well and good, because it really shatters black's pawns. But watch this. This is where precise calculation is needed. And Morphy had obviously foreseen this, that basically the white queen gets checkmated. And after this exchange, of course, that just corrects the pawn structure. And, well, it looks about equal, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's the first bit of excellent calculation from Morphy. The other thing is Morphy recognised that black's king is worse than white's. So in this kind of situation, guys, we need to keep the queens on. So Paul Green, well done. Queen h3 suggested. And that's the move he
Yeah.
played. Yeah, and well done to...
Because in a major piece ending, king safety that's probably the single most important factor, and white has such a big advantage in that black has work cut out for him.
So, yeah, well done to Aravind and well done to Paul Green, who both suggested Queen h3. And, yeah, it's a forcing move too. I mean, time is also a very important element in this position. Queen f6 played. And, again, I really like the way that Morphy played this next move. Really excellent move. So, again, I'm going to throw this one out. White to play. What did Morphy do next? Yeah, this part of the game was very vigorous. I really like it. It's all gone quiet again. It's much too difficult for them, Charles. I'm just going to have to show it if everyone's too shy.
Yeah, it's a positional idea with some tactical underpinnings, right?
Yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. Okay, I'm going to show it, guys. Rook AE1, a very important move because after this move, he doesn't have to exchange and actually can make progress by slamming the rook on E5. And of course, well, as we can all see, if that's taken, then white crashes through on F5. So rook E5 basically just gets a foothold in the position. So there we go.
Yeah. And in practice, that foothold's going to be enough to win. In the land of stockfish, maybe black can hold this, but that's really the key move that keeps white in control of the position.
Definitely. So let me zip through this quickly. So this is how the game continued. So that rook has established itself on a beautiful square, shutting out the queen, tying black to this pawn. And I'm just going to zip on. Actually, this is really important. Again, I very often stop at this moment and ask students, okay, what next? But I mean, I'm going to show it. We haven't got enough time. Very simple. Basically, Morphy understands that his king is completely secure on h2, and black cannot lay a glove on white in this position. And yeah, white basically has control. Now, how you win this is another matter, but here's an interesting moment. I'll get there. So this is the game. Right, if anyone can find Morphy's move here, I will be very impressed. So white to play. And for me, this game, and particularly this middle game, shows how sophisticated Morphy was as a player, actually.
Absolutely. Yeah. His technique was superb, really. And it's a consistent theme.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, a couple of viewers have suggested rook takes h6. I'm afraid this one doesn't cut the mustard because after this, black takes on f4. And black is okay there. So no, it's not rook takes h6. Everyone's spotted that one. Charles, they're making lots of forcing moves.
right. But they're not all good.
Exactly.
and that one is fool's gold because you're allowing black to trade off his weaknesses and get active. And those are, black's two problems are he's passive and he has to defend three weaknesses here on h6, g6, and f5.
Yeah.
So you want to think long and hard before you let him liquidate that situation.
Yeah. Queen e8 suggested. Now that's obviously a serious threat. I have a feeling that this is a good move afterwards. I think that's a good move.
Yeah, good
So
counter, equal or stronger threat there.
yeah, and
Yeah,
basically ends up in a
yeah,
draw. I could be
yeah.
wrong, but
I think so. Yeah,
I think that's correct.
yep. Yeah, I guess this is a tough one for the average person because yeah, you really it takes a deep understanding of the position.
Yeah, I'm going to show it because
Yeah,
everyone's yeah. I said okay. The move he played is b3, and this position is Zugzwang. So black does not have a good move in this position. This is absolutely brilliant, and that's why I mentioned that Morphy's level of understanding was really sophisticated. So basically, what can black do? Well, a5, you can push some pawns, but then a4,
right.
still nothing to do there. Okay, what else can you do? You can move the king back, but h6. Well, I mean, rook g6 and rook h6 wins, so the king can't move.
Right.
The queen can't move. Rook can't move because this drops. And so the game went b5. I mean, black has no good move in that position. That was taken, and basically that's decisive because white maintains all the pressure.
Yeah.
And his position is now lost. Of course, as usual, with two connected passes on the king side, it's in rook and pawn endgame. It's actually a very simple win. And yeah, his technique was good. And yeah, that was the end of the game. So yeah, Shoulders of Giants says, wow, b3 is amazing. How have I never seen this Morphy game? I'll tell you why, because it's not the usual crash bang stuff.
Right.
And
Yeah.
also, I would say it needs explaining.
Mhm.
One might play through this game very quickly without realizing how brilliant this game is, because it
Right.
all seems like
Yeah.
black just collapses. In fact,
Yeah.
Morphy's moves were bang on, and that's why
Right.
I was very, very impressed with that game. It's one that I've always really liked. Now listen, Charles, we're already over time, but we had this question right at the end. So Morphy came to Europe. He basically defeated the leading masters of the day convincingly.
Yeah.
How long was he in Europe for?
About a year.
About a year. So he
Yeah.
returned in 1859, is that right?
Yes, after the Anderson match, about a month after the Anderson match.
Okay. What happened next?
Well, he got a hero's welcome in New York. Literally, I mean, he took up almost the whole front page of the New York Times.
Wow.
While he was touring New York, and well, a few things happened. Um, Unfortunately, within the next year, well, not within the next year, but the the deterioration of American politics that led to the Civil War began to happen. And in the meantime, in Morphy's life, he failed to launch. He was supposed to be ready to be a lawyer, but I think what happened is the early stages of his mental illness began, and he wasn't able. He made a few attempts to establish himself as a lawyer. It didn't work out, and
So this is interesting to me. So why didn't it work out? Because we know that, okay, he had a brilliant chess mind, but also it's
right,
recorded that
yeah,
his memory was
right,
extraordinary, and he was
right,
prodigious
yeah,
at school and prodigious
right,
in his law studies. So
right,
why didn't it work out?
yeah. Well, he was great at the theoretical part of it, but he did not have his father's charisma. It wasn't really him to be an aggressive, outspoken figure, and I think he didn't have the people skills.
Hmm.
Um, it just and also I think the early signs of his mental illness began to kick in.
Okay,
Um,
so again, I want to drill down into that. So when you say mental illness,
Yeah.
what exactly was it?
Okay. Well, I'm going to depart a little bit from some of the things I wrote in the Real Paul Morphy because when the second edition comes out, which hopefully will be within the next year, I'm actually refining my view of his mental health problems a little bit.
Okay.
I was thinking that what happened was he gradually developed some sort of organic brain injury, but now I'm more inclined to believe that it was schizophrenia because schizophrenia typically starts in early adulthood. That's the average time it starts is in your early 20s. So luckily for Morphy, he accomplishes great feats while he still could. And then I think he began to develop the early signs of schizophrenia. So, eventually he would become very paranoid, thinking that his family members were conspiring against him. And then, at first the symptoms weren't that severe and he could contain it most of the time. But as time went on, it got worse and worse. But a serious mental illness like that typically prevents one from launching a successful business career, that involves
Yeah.
interaction and other things.
Just I want to cut in that we have a very impatient viewer. Herr Schnatzker says, how is it possible to talk about this time without mentioning the war between the states, especially in New Orleans?
Well,
Herr Schnatzker, I want to shoot back at Herr Schnatzker because we haven't got to that bit of the story yet. He's only just come back from Europe.
Yeah,
Patience.
That's the answer. We're talking a little before the Civil War.
Yeah.
And then the Civil War happened, and that had a tremendous impact on his whole family. Basically, they were displaced, and they had to leave. Things got really bad because the New Orleans was one of the first cities to be occupied by the Union Army. So they were basically under occupation by a hostile power. And most of the wealthy people fled to Europe temporarily. That's what his family did.
Okay, so Morphy ended up going back to Europe.
He did. He and his family spent a couple of years in Paris in the 1860s.
Wow. And did he play any chess in those years?
Only casual chess against his friend de Rivière was his best Parisian friend, who was a young, very talented master. And so, yes, the Civil War had a profound effect, but I think it was in addition to these biological, deficits in his mental health.
But it can't have been easy. I mean, good grief, a time of frankly brutal war. I mean, the American Civil War, of course, as we know, was absolutely devastating.
Yeah, and what made it even more complicated was that Morphy didn't really believe in succession. He wanted the South to stay in the Union.
Okay.
So he was kind of a pariah in that way. It was almost dangerous to be anti-succession in the South.
Wow. Okay, that's very interesting. So did he play? I mean, once he'd returned from Paris or before going to Paris during the Civil War, did he play any part in the Civil War?
There are some rumblings that he apparently he tried to. He met with Judah P. Benjamin, was the Confederate Secretary of War, and he was a Morphy family friend. Morphy's father, Alonzo, was the best man at Judah P. Benjamin's wedding and signed the wedding contract. So he apparently tried, but he was discouraged from, being in combat. They thought he wasn't really cut out to go to war. So then there are some rumors that he acted as a Confederate spy, but nothing that's really been confirmed.
Okay.
So basically, it seems more like his family just fled and stayed out of harm's way, and came back when the war was over.
Yeah, as you say, they were a very affluent family, so they could afford to get out.
Right, and it did have a very devastating impact on everyone involved, and it was difficult. But but that alone doesn't explain, then going on to have a lifetime of paranoid and bizarre symptoms. You know, a lot of people come through war
Yeah.
like that in one piece,
Right.
and he really, I think his slide had already begun before the war.
I suppose
But
it's
it
always
certainly,
I suppose it's always difficult when you've had this unbelievably successful career as a chess player, or I mean, I'm thinking of any sport,
yes,
and
yeah,
and there's that moment where you stop and you have to transition
right,
and basically find a new role in,
yes,
a lot of sportsmen and women go into broadcasting, or they might
right,
try to get into some other kind of business maybe related to the sport, but it's a
right.
very tricky time. So basically he didn't manage that transition very well.
That's right. And also, his family did not consider chess as a real profession or a respectable profession.
Okay,
So
so there
his
were tensions there already.
big tensions. His mother
Wow.
discouraged him from it. You know, they wanted him to follow in his father's footsteps and be a great lawyer, and
Mm.
he just wasn't cut out for it. So yeah, there's that. There were a lot of factors that kind of converge, you know, that played into his illness. And yeah, basically he became um, sort of a useless, you know, lump on a log. But yeah, he renounced chess, and that was all his greatness was, you know, was over the
Mm.
chessboard.
It's very
So you
sad.
know, if he were alive today, it would have been different because you know, he could have made a good career. Even then, I think he could have made a career because he was the first American sports hero. You know,
Mm.
we didn't have baseball, football, and all these other things.
Mm.
He was actually the first American to dominate any field on the world stage.
Oh no, that's very interesting.
You know, I think he was so famous that he could have made a living just off of books and endorsements and the like. But you know, but then he thought that partly because of his mental illness, he thought that chess was not a respectable occupation. It was just a pastime that
Mm.
was meaningless. So he sort of renounced all his accomplishments.
Wow, that's fascinating. Very interesting. Got a question from Herr Schnatzko who says, "Did he meet General the Beast Butler in New Orleans?"
Not that I know of. No, I don't believe he did. But I think Butler contributed to his family leaving. You know, a lot of Butler was, yeah, he was kind of extreme in some of his policies to try to pacify New Orleans because it was very hard. He had an army of maybe a few thousand men who were in charge of controlling the biggest city in the South,
Right.
third biggest city in the U.S.
Mm.
And so they were under a lot of pressure, and he implemented some policies that were very draconian and unpopular.
We've got another question here. Paul Green asks, "Did the family lose its wealth and social standing?"
They did not lose all their wealth. No, they were still able to live comfortably. And social standing, I mean, his father had died, so you know a lot of their social standing was around his father's career, but his mother was still a popular figure. But I think what happened was I think they became more reclusive after the Civil War, and
Okay.
you know Paul lived with his mother for the rest of his life, and his youngest sister, who also may have had some issues, also was living there with them.
Okay.
So yeah, you know they became much less prominent certainly.
And just to, because we've got to wrap up pretty soon. Thank you very
Yeah,
much for staying on for so long. It's
sure.
I'm really grateful. So what year did Morphy die, and how old was he?
He was in his 60s, and I want to say 18. hmm,
I
I don't
could,
want to. I don't want to misstep. So
yeah, I could Google it, of course.
it was in the early 1880s.
Okay,
I want to say. Um,
I'll look it up. Hang on.
yeah,
And what was the
I
actual
should
cause?
remember this, but I
Uh,
can't tell you
Yeah,
right off the top of my
1884. It says here. There we go.
1884. Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
So
so okay, he wasn't even he didn't make
60.
he wasn't even 60. Yeah.
That's right.
So he's
Yeah,
57, something like that.
that's right.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
excuse me. Well, it's 47. I can't add up. He was 47 years old.
That's right. That actually sounds right.
Yeah, 47 years old.
Right, because he was born in 1837.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a young man.
Okay. Wow, that's amazing. Listen, we've got to wrap it up there.
Okay.
I've really enjoyed dipping into the book over the past couple of months. Absolutely
Well,
fascinating, and it's
thanks.
given me a new appreciation of Morphy, which he certainly deserves it. Got one final question for you,
Okay.
which is: was there any attempt to arrange a match between Steinitz and Morphy?
No, I think not. I think by the time that Steinitz was really ascendant, Morphy had been retired for so long
Yeah,
that people had given up. There were lots of attempts to get him to come back and play in a tournament, but he refused. Even he after the Civil War, he wouldn't even play casual games against leading masters who he came in contact with. So it was too late.
yeah.
He did meet Steinitz very late in his life, and that's an interesting little
Wow,
sub story.
that's
And
extraordinary.
Steinitz liked him and sort of took pity on him because he was, very obviously mentally ill by then.
Wow. So basically, when Steinitz moved to the States, it must have happened then.
Yes, right. He came to visit New Orleans. He was paid to come down there, by the local club then, and he
Wow.
ran into Morphy in the street. And
That's mad. That's mad.
yeah, when Morphy heard that he was visiting, he said, yeah, I know him. His gambit is unsound. He was referring to the Steinitz gambit in the King's Gambit, and
Fantastic.
technically he was correct.
Okay, that's absolutely amazing. Listen, we're going to wrap it up there. I would encourage everyone, if you're interested in, well, Morphy, chess history, history of the States. I mean, I think it's fascinating when you say that he was the kind of first American sports hero,
That's right.
superstar. I mean, that's amazing. I hadn't really kind of clicked on that one, but yeah, I must have been. So the
Very
book,
much so.
so the book, I've pinned the link to New in Chess there, where you can find the book, and I warmly recommend it. It's really excellent. So yeah, Charles, thank you very much for joining me on the broadcast and giving such an entertaining and fascinating account of
Well, thank
Morphy's
you. It's
life. And yeah, it's a
been
really
a great
great book.
pleasure.
Oh,
Appreciate it.
you're welcome. So thanks everyone for watching, and we will see you soon.